Scarecrow the Reaping was an original haunted house at both Halloween Horror Nights Orlando and Hollywood. The Orlando version was in 2017 and the Hollywood version was in 2022. In Orlando, the haunted house was located behind the World Expo section of Universal Studios inside of Sprung Tent 1. And in Hollywood, the haunted house was located in the upper lot inside of the Curious George Tent 1. Halloween Horror Nights Orlando announced the haunted house on YouTube through a promotional video, and Halloween Horror Nights Hollywood announced the haunted house at the Halloween Horror Convention Midsummer Scream. Originally, I was going to do a side-by-side comparison of the two haunted houses, similar to the Holidayz in Hell haunted house retrospective video. Quick shameless plug, definitely watch that video after this if you're interested in non-Halloween holidays mixing in with horror. Alright, back to the video. The two versions of Scarecrow the Reaping seem to be pretty different from each other. Plus, the Orlando version of the haunted house happened in 2017, and back then walkthrough footage wasn't the best. So for this video, we will be going over both versions of the haunted house separately, starting with the 2017 version in Orlando. The facade of the haunted house was themed to a cornfield with corn stalks scattered around. Guests entered the haunted house through a Great Depression era farmhouse, and the walkthrough begins in a room full of dead vines. As guests try to navigate through the room, the first scarecrow of the haunted house jumps out. At the end of the room, another scarecrow jumps out as well. The next room is full of old pictures on the wall. Two of the pictures are actually drop doors, with static skeletons being flashed with a strobe light in the background, revealing their presence. Before the drop doors, there's a scarecrow's head that pops out of the wall. It is unclear though if this is the same scarecrow in the previous room. After this, guests walk into a room where the ceiling has broke. Towards the end of the room, a scarecrow pops out from the rubble. The following room is full of shelves, and in between one of them, a scarecrow jumps out a guest. The next room has a different change of pace. The room is filled with animal fur, and the scarecrows that pop out look like pigs and wolves. Guests then walk outside, not literally, but onto an outside set. On the right is a collapsed weather vane, and inside of it, there's a scare actor dressed as a bush who pops out. Across from this is an outhouse, and supposedly there was a scare actor who would jump out, but I was only able to find a static scarecrow standing behind the outhouse door, or this is an actual person who's really good at staying still. This follows into a hallway, and at the end, there's a scarecrow who jumps out at guests in a wooden box. Another scarecrow holding a scythe runs out of a door. After all this, guests walk past a straw hut where a scarecrow pops out from inside, which is terrifying. Down a short hallway, another scarecrow jumps out surrounded by hanging bags. The next room is what I like to call the poop room. Inside, guests can hear crows flying around and water sprays on them, mimicking bird poop. Guests then walk into a decaying room where two scarecrows jump out of raised windows. There's a large scarecrow who stands still in plain sight and lunges towards guests, revealing that it's a puppet and not a static scarecrow. The house ends in a mirror maze room, with corn stalks hanging from the ceiling. Two scarecrows are hiding in the room and pop out, giving the final scares. Now let's jump to 2022, where Halloween Horror Nights Hollywood brought Scarecrow the Reaping Maze to the West Coast. Spoiler alert, it's not a blind copy of the 2017 Orlando version of the house, but they do share some similarities. In the Hollywood version, guests start their walkthrough in front of an abandoned farmhouse with a small fence section filled with corn stalks. This is nothing compared to the vast amount of corn stalks in front of the Orlando version of the haunted house. The Hollywood version also includes a BK farm truck next to the corn stalk. The actual entrance to the house is supposedly similar to the 2011 Halloween Horror Nights Hollywood haunted house, Alice Cooper, Welcome to My Nightmare, which I guess they are both old barn style houses, but the only reason why I'm bringing this up is when I was checking to see if they were similar, I was caught off guard on how long it took to get to the haunted house. I know Hollywood is hilly, but dang, you have to put a lot of work in just to get to the houses in California. Anyway, the first room is pretty boring. There's no scare actors to be found. The room is filled with overgrown vines on the walls, and broken drywall is revealing the outside light into the house. Guests walk through an open wide door with cloth hanging from the top. There's a grandfather clock to the right and a door covered in vines straight ahead. Still, there are no scare actors to be found, but at least there's a small skeleton and an old doll on the wall with vines wrapping all around them. Next to the door is an open hallway where, after 30 seconds, guests finally encounter a scare actor. Two actually. The first one is at the end of the hallway. A scarecrow opens the broken wall and pops out, clawing guests walking by. Standing across from the first scarecrow is another scarecrow who swings at a guest, who are walking into the next room. Both of these are known as skelly crows, which are scarecrows where you can see the bones sticking out of their outfits. I'm not a huge fan of the scare actor placement here. It would have been a much better flow if one of the scare actors popped out of the door in the second room next to the skeleton and the doll. It's a bit slow to walk through two rooms before having any interactions with a scare actor. Next is the dining room, which really reminds me of the Thanksgiving room in the 2023 Holidayz in Hell Haunted House. A while back ago, I did make a video about the Holidayz in Hell Haunted House. If you're interested in watching it, the video link will be in the description of this video. In the Scarecrow the Reaping Haunted House's dining room scene, guests walk by a deceased family at the dining room table. There's an animatronic crow eating an eyeball out of one of the family members. Next to the table is a broken window where a dusty Scarecrow jumps out. These scarecrows appear very chalky looking and their bodies are covered in topsoil. The next room isn't clearly defined, but it's a kitchen where the walls are filled with newspaper clippings from the 1930s Dust Bowl. Small history lesson if you're not aware, the 1930s Dust Bowl was a real-life event that occurred in multiple states, mainly in Oklahoma and Texas, where severe dust storms happened across the state. Multiple static farmers are seen with corn stuffed into their mouths, one of which was actually the grandma from the Holidayz in Hell Thanksgiving scene. So I wasn't wrong about comparing the dining room to Holidayz in Hell. Before guests walk into the next room, which is a pantry, another Scarecrow jumps out of the door with an axe in his hand. The pantry itself is pretty uneventful, but after guests walk out of it, two Scarecrows jump out from two doors across from each other at the same time. The next room is the smokehouse, where a selection of weapons is seen covered in blood on the wall. On the next wall was a group of skinned rabbits and chickens. While walking through, a barn crow jumps out of a boo hole. The barn crow is most similar to the traditional Scarecrow, through wearing an orange shirt and blue overall jeans while being stuffed with hay. Guests would then have to push through bloody intestines hanging from the wall, and past three farmers who have been stuffed with hay by the Scarecrows. The barn crow from before pops out again in the next room, next to another farmer who has been attacked. Ahead are more farmers stuffed with hay, and a beast crow pops out from behind the farmers. It's a good time to mention that in some of the walkthroughs, a beast crow pops out in some boo holes. They are scarecrows that have pig heads. Leaving the smokehouse would lead guests to an outside section of the haunted house. To clarify, this was still inside of the haunted house structure, just themed to be outside of the barn. There's 3 more farmers who are hung up like scarecrows, and an outhouse that is open and sprays water on guests walking by. Before guests walk into the barn, 2 more scarecrows pop out from opposite sides. A bush scarecrow who is hiding up against the barn wall jumps out from the left, and a CB crow, which is a scarecrow who was once a human, pops out from the right side. The barn is filled with ropes and tools, and behind 2 light brown cloths is another scarecrow jumping on a guest. A static farmer is seen hanging from a rope, while a CP crow pops out. The rest of the barn follows a structure where there are different sections that are mostly empty, but in a few are scarecrows who attack guests walking through. When guests exit the barn, they head into the Ruiqi, which is the most similar part of this haunted house to the original version of Scarecrow the Reaping in Orlando back in 2017. In this room, there's bird poop all over the floor, and static farmers are stuck to the wall with vines. Water would occasionally drop down on guests, simulating bird poop. After the Ruiqi was a dark room with strings hanging from the walls. These rooms are the worst in my opinion in haunted houses, and if you know, you know. Once there was a light again in the haunted house, guests would walk by a group of static farmers turning into scarecrows. In the next room, scare actor versions of these farmers would run out of guests. This would happen in the next room as well, but after this room, the house would transform into a cornfield. On both sides of the path, scarecrows would pop out, which, thinking about it now, was very popular in this haunted house, having scare actors next to each other rather than being spread out. As guests exit the house, the king crow pops out, which is a giant crow scarecrow on stilts. Both versions of the haunted house are based on an abandoned Depression-era farmhouse, where scarecrows would come to life and seek vengeance. But the houses were vastly different due to the year gap between them. Which version of the haunted house do you prefer, Orlando or Hollywood? Thanks for watching. If you made it this far, you should give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't already for more Halloween Horror Nights video essays.